Hello colorful quilters, and welcome back to YouTube and the Super Simple Sampler. We have been working on our little 6-inch sampler blocks for a couple of videos now, and I focused mostly on showing you how to make some of the specific blocks using squares, flying geese, rectangles, and triangles. Today we're going to change gears a little bit. I'm going to show you how to make the setting squares that I plan to use when I sew all of my sampler squares together. The Super Simple Sampler instructions are all located on my website. They're totally free. I will put the link in the comments below the video, so be sure and scroll down and click through, and you can make all of the blocks yourself and sew along with us. Okay, so today we are going to make these little hourglass blocks, and my plan for the finished quilt is to use these to alternate with my sampler blocks. Okay, so it'll be every other block will be a sampler block, and every other block will be one of these little hourglass blocks. Okay, and what I think that's going to do in my final layout is going to create a really cute design where you get these squares, the pink and the white squares around each block. It lets each of your little pieced blocks that you've put so much work into really show up, and you can really enjoy those. And it also kind of simplifies your design, gives your eye a place to rest, rather than just piecing all of these really busy blocks right next to each other. And it's a lot more interesting than just doing sashing. Okay, so I will show you how to make these little blocks so that you can get to work on them at the same time you're sewing your sampler blocks, and pretty soon we'll have enough to put our whole top together. Okay, let's get to work. Okay, here we are. We are getting started on the little hourglass blocks. These are going to be the setting squares alternating with the sampler blocks in our quilt. So it'll be sampler blocks, hourglass block, sampler block to make up our entire quilt top. We can make 4 of these at a time using this technique that I'm going to show you. So it makes them fairly quick. These are also great for using your scraps. You don't have to do them as organized as I am. I'm using 2 different pink fabrics. You could use all the same if you have yardage of a pink, or you can make them all different. Okay, so the things that you're going to need are a pen for marking your fabric. You're going to need your rotary cutter handy for cutting the blocks apart. And you're going to need a ruler around 12 inches long so that you can mark your squares and then also cut them apart. Okay, you will also need 2 squares of your pink fabric. Each one should be 7 1/4 inches square. And then you'll need 2 squares of your white fabric, each of them 7 1/4 inch square. Okay, so let's go to the cutting mat. First thing we are going to do is take one of our pink squares and one of our white squares and match them up right sides facing. Okay, so get those edges lined up, the corners, right sides facing, and then take your pen and your ruler to mark from one corner to the other on the diagonal. And for this one, you will need a 1/4 inch foot on your machine or your needle set to sew a 1/4 inch, because you're not going to you're going to sew a 1/4 inch to both sides of this line. Okay, so put your 1/4 inch foot on your machine or adjust your needle. That's what I do on mine. And you're going to sew a seam a 1/4 inch on both sides of your marked line. Okay, I have stitched on both sides of my white line. You can see I've got 2 seams there. Now I'm going to take my ruler and cut on the white line, or on the marked line. So important thing to remember on this is the marked line is for cutting, and then you're going to sew to either side of it. So I'm going to just cut on that marked line. This is going to give me 2 half square triangles in one color. Okay, in my case, since I'm using 2 different pink fabrics, I'm going to do the same thing again with my other pink. If you're using scraps, you could use it with a different fabric. If you're doing them all the same, then you're just going to repeat this step again, okay, to make our 4 blocks. So I will make my other one and I'll get these pressed. Okay, so what I am going to do is take one of each of my half square triangle units in each color. Okay, and again, I'm going to do what I did earlier and place them right sides facing. This time I want to make sure that the seams down the center are lined up with each other and the colors are opposite. So I've got pink on one side and white opposite each other. Okay, so, and I use my fingers to kind of feel where the seam is in both layers so that I can line those up carefully so that it's lined up. And if you press all of your fabrics in the same direction, so in my case I'm pressing toward the pink, then they will nest nicely because they'll be opposing. Okay. And once again, I am going to mark down the center on the diagonal from one corner to the other with my pen. Okay, and then same exact thing once again. I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch on both sides. Okay. Okay, once those 2 seams are sewn, I'm going to use my ruler again to cut on the marked line. Remember, you cut on your pen line. And that is going to give us 2 of our hourglass units. We'll repeat the same thing with the other 2 squares so that we end up with 4. When I take these to the ironing board, I can split the center seam to make them twirl. So can you see how if I pull that center apart a little bit and then I can make them lie down and then they press really nicely and you have a little less bulk in the center. Okay, so just separate that center seam so that you get your seams twirling and then press those really nicely. Okay, you should have 4 beautiful hourglass blocks and hopefully they measure 6.5 inches square. So if you'd like, you can cut off your little points where the triangles come together, or where the little triangles hang off the edges. But otherwise, you are all set. And there you have it. You have a set of your little hourglass blocks all done. So by cutting 2 white squares and 2 pink squares, or whatever your chosen color is, you'll be able to make 4 of these blocks all at the same time. Okay, so for my quilt, I'm planning on making all 36 of the super simple sampler blocks. And again, all those instructions are on the website. And that would mean if I alternate them that I also need 36 of these little hourglass blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and make 36 of each of those. That'll make my quilt turn out to be 8 blocks by 9 blocks. And if I decide that I want to make it a little bit bigger, I can always repeat some of the sampler blocks and make more hourglass blocks if I want to at the end. But so far, if you're sewing along with me, plan to make 36 of each block and we'll alternate them, and pretty soon we'll be ready to sew them together. But we will come back and make a few more of the blocks in some future videos and keep working away on these. Alright, thank you for joining me, and until next time, see you later. If you're a colorful quilter, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so that you'll be notified whenever there's a new video. I'd love to have you join me and sew along.